So I'm really excited today to have Joan Herlong here from Sotheby's International Realty. Joan is an amazing real estate broker and also owns a Sotheby's affiliate down in Greenville, South Carolina. Welcome, Joan, to our interview today. Now, just one more thing. We're specifically doing this interview for Women's History Month. And we wanted to honor Joan because she is such an amazing woman, amazing.
I make a lot of history. Yeah.
An amazing leader and an amazing mom too. So, Joan, welcome.
Thank you, Liz. I appreciate it.
That's okay. I'm really excited to be doing this on my birthday, especially.
Well, it is a gift. Thank you.
Yeah. So I really wanted to talk to you about what it's been like to be a woman working in real estate and in the era and time that you've been doing it, which has been a long time, where it started to where it is now and how much it's evolved for women and what your experience has been. So tell me a little bit about being a woman in real estate. Tell me a little bit about where it started, at the beginning when you first
where
started.
it started was over 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And my oldest was 9 at the time, and my youngest was 1. We have 4 children. And I had been staying home for 7 years, and that was my choice.
Yeah.
Because I had been working full-time before that, then part-time. Part-time was terrible because I could never get loyal, and part-time are oxymoronic in terms of childcare. You can't do it. So anyway, I stayed home for 7 years. That was my choice. My husband supported that choice 100%, even though it meant not eating meat much. And I grew probably too tired of being underestimated. At that time, there was a real dichotomy, which I don't think has gone away, but it has decreased. But at that time, there was a real dichotomy between working mothers and mothers who were staying at home with their kids. And when I went back to work, I not so subtly got kicked out of a carpool because I told one of the other mothers that my nanny might have to drive for me on Thursday or whatever. And I was immediately kicked out because I can't blame them for it. They said, it's one thing for you to be driving my children, but I don't know who your nanny is. And I would rather not be in a carpool if your nanny is going to be one of the drivers. Of course, they were making the appropriate assumption that I would only, have hired people who are on parole for drunk driving. But I get that. Okay. I get that. But it's part of that whole dichotomy. And, being in real estate, particularly as I started out, most of the buyers and sellers in my market, and this continues to be the case, are families with young children.
Yeah.
And one of the things you have to be I had to be very careful about at the time was it could never be, I work and you don't. Because a lot of the women, moms who did not work were my clients, future clients, past clients. And there were a lot of women in the working world who were sort of like, I work and you don't. Like, I'm better than you.
Right.
And I think that women were unfortunately sort of not on each other's side about that. I think it is really lessened. But all 3 of my daughters and my daughter-in-law, they all work.
Yeah.
It didn't occur to them. It was their choice. But when they became mothers, the only thing they were debating was how much maternity leave that they were taking. But it was never a question in their minds that they wanted to continue working full time.
But your point is like really well taken, that when you were raising your kids and you were starting all of this work, it was a really hard time. Moms were not getting the support they really needed to raise your family, which is so I can imagine you probably had lots of hurdles and lots of even prejudices against you because you were working, which we have definitely seen a big shift around now.
Absolutely. But I felt like there was prejudice against me before I went back to the workforce because, like I said, I didn't like being underestimated.
Yeah.
And when my husband and I would go to various business or social events as part of his law practice, I'd meet other people, men, and they'd say, "What do you do?" Because
Mm-hmm.
that's all they can say. "What do you do?" And I would say, "Well, right now I'm focused on, I'm at home with 4 children." And
Uh,
they would, pretty much pat me on the head
yeah.
and say, "Oh," the rejoinder was off, "Well, you got your hands full." And then they would look around for somebody with some brain cells between their ears that they could talk to.
Right.
And I just hated being underestimated. I
Yeah.
also didn't like the fact that women who were staying at home, and my mom was certainly a role model for this, are expected to chair every charity, volunteer, PTA,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
And it was free labor.
Mm-hmm.
And my mother, before she went back to work when I
Yeah.
was 17, she was the chairman of everything.
Mm.
But I think that she felt underappreciated. So,
Yeah.
but like when I went back to work, one of the women that I knew through junior league said, "Oh, well, isn't that interesting? Well, good luck to you, but I cannot imagine buying a house through you, but good luck to you."
Really?
Well, and she wasn't being ugly. She was just being very candid. It's like, well, good for you. Yeah. The reason I chose real estate, as much as I didn't want to go into it, because my mother turned me against it. She was obsessed with her. And I think my mother would have been obsessed with any work that she had done, but
Yeah.
she was in real estate and she was obsessed with that.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I saw it as the one thing that I could do where I would be my own boss.
Yeah.
I would call my own shots. And I really
Mm-hmm.
had this idea that I could do it part time because let's face
Mm-hmm.
it, most realtors are dabblers, they're in it part time. But
Mm.
I thought, well, I can do this part time so that, 20 hours a week I'm at home with my kids and 20 hours a week it doesn't work that
Mm-hmm.
way.
Mm-hmm.
And I sold my first house in 2 weeks. And for better or worse, that was like catnip to me.
Yeah.
And I very soon hired a nanny, a
Mm-hmm.
full time nanny, because
Mm-hmm.
if you don't have full time childcare, it's not going to work. I don't care what you're doing, but
Yeah.
you've got to have something stable,
Yeah.
reliable, and helpful
Mm-hmm.
with your kids. Somebody who says I'm doing it all, they're doing none of it well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I went through. I had to kiss a lot of frogs before we found a good, stable nanny situation. But
Mm-hmm.
it's always true that you get what you pay for. But anyway, about 6 weeks into it, I complained to my broker in charge, and I said, you told me that I could do this part time,
Mm.
and it is not turning out that way, and you have misled me. And he said, "No, you cannot do this part time. That's a you problem. That's your personality. That's your drive.
Uh-huh.
But most people do this part time, and so that's a you thing. So I've always done it full time. I mean, I tried to be part time like the first 3-4 months. It just didn't work out. But
Yeah.
it did give me. I wanted flexibility. I wanted to
Mm-hmm.
be able to know what my children look like.
Yeah.
Um, But I also wanted to make some real money. I didn't want pin money. I didn't want
Yeah.
mad money. I already had that doing freelance writing and it's
Yeah.
not enough. And I think to this day, women are sort of regarded as being somewhat vulgar if they talk
Mm-hmm.
about, I want to make a decent living. I want to make money. That's
Mm-hmm.
something men talk about, but I don't really
Mm.
worry about that too much.
So
Um,
do you still see that? Because I've seen a major shift around that, but I still see they're laggards. They're still, I've seen a shift that women are talking about money. It's a thing that we tell women, you need to talk about money. You need to talk about money. You need to talk about it with your friends. You need to talk about it with your colleagues. You need to talk about it in your work. Because how are you going to a lot of women were raised that it was rude and inappropriate to talk about money, but and you shouldn't do it in a way that's, obnoxious, but you should be doing it in a way that's educational and interesting and thoughtful and provocative, right?
well, you're right.
So,
It is rude to talk about money if you're asking for more allowance. I was never asking for more allowance. I knew my value. I knew my worth. And one of the great things about being in an eat what you kill business is
mm,
that my worth is constantly reinforced by the service that I deliver to my clients.
right,
So if I
right,
wanted a raise, work harder.
yeah,
There's no
yeah,
luck involved, but women are trained to be docile In fact, in high
Mhm.
school, I was criticized. You're just like your
Mhm.
older sisters and you're not docile enough. I'm like, cows are docile. But we are people, our society programs women to be docile. But on the other hand, we always want our daughters to do their best and to get the best grades and to be on the best team. Is that so that they can be a good wife? I mean, that's really just part of
Mhm.
the puzzle. And you don't see anybody's tombstone saying, "Boy, she was a good wife." That's it's
Yeah.
not that's
Yeah.
not it's a part of your life if you decide that that's a part of your life, but it's
Yeah.
not the be all and end all. I also before I went back to work and I was thinking, do I want to do this? What it wasn't whether I was going to go back to work, it was when. And I
Mhm.
remember listening to a woman who was I forget her name, forgot what I had for breakfast, but she gave a very compelling presentation and she was talking granted she was talking to a room full of junior league members at the time who were
Mhm.
mostly stay-at-home moms at that time. I don't think
Mhm.
that's true anymore, but she said something that I found really compelling. She said, when you give your life to your children, you are giving them a gift that they never asked for,
Mhm.
that they can't return. They're not going to give their life to you,
Mhm.
and it can become burdensome.
Mhm.
Whereas if you share your life with your children, then you will raise them to be adults that, if you're lucky, they will want to share their life, their lives with you. And
Mhm.
one of the things that I said at all four of my kids' weddings was, now the two of you are a family in your own right.
Mhm.
And you are always welcome in our home, but you are never obligated.
Mhm.
Because, if coming to my house is a holy day of obligation, then everything is just ladled with guilt and nobody really wants to be there.
Yeah.
But I grew up sharing my life, sharing my
Mhm.
work life. God, my kids knew about every good or bad deal I was going through, but they were also sharing their lives with me and they continue to. But if I
Right.
had given, and I knew so many women who suddenly their youngest was in first grade and they
Mhm.
didn't have anything to do for 7 hours a day, and they
Yeah.
would fall into a depression because what were they
Yeah.
supposed to do? What were they
Yeah.
supposed to do? So, a lot of them had a bonus baby.
Yeah. Well, something we definitely see if we look at real estate and the kind of the history of it, is that one of the things that was great about real estate, it was an area for women that they could get into and they could make money. And if you look at all the other options, if you look in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, like women, or especially not 90s, but definitely 70s, let's say it, women's choices were to go become a secretary, to become a teacher, to become a nurse, right?
Oh, they
And
had separate
so,
sections for want ads for females.
yeah, so being able to get into real estate and control your income and really make money gave women a lot of freedom. And I don't know if you realize this, but women couldn't even have their own bank accounts or credit cards until 1974.
I know.
So that was really significant. And so then the momentum went. And so that's why so many people got into real estate, also for some of the flexibility. But the truth is that you really, if you want to be someone who's successful in the business, you're going to be working 7 days a week. And that's not very flexible. I
Right.
mean, mind you, you might not work from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m., but who cares if you're working from 9 p.m. to 11 p.m., right?
Right.
So I've always thought that piece around the flexibility, especially in today's world where now people work very different hours anyway because of technology really has shifted everything.
Yes.
But now, being that it's been a predominantly female dominated business, we're really starting to see a shift. Men are coming in, and one of the notable facts is that as men come in, they're rising to the top. And
Yes.
we're seeing a lot of the top brokers in the country are men, even though they're a small percentage of the brokers. So tell me about that. Why do you think that is?
Well, I'd say, yeah, one of the big shifts in my industry is that when I went into the business, it was men were the exception, not the rule, except in management and ownership.
Mm,
But as residential real estate became a career in its own right and people were making some real money, then
yeah,
men moved into it. When I first started in the business, I would say most of the men had retired from something else and they were just dabbling. In my
right.
own company, about half of my agents are men. but they are
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneurs. They are in it to win it.
Mm-hmm.
And they have different strengths to bring to the table versus women. But you're right. In terms of management and ownership and decision making in our industry, it's still
Mm-hmm.
very male dominated. I went to
Yeah.
a luncheon yesterday, and it was about women, women of influence, and it was an awards thing. And time after time, with each blurb for each award recipient, they kept talking about, oh, she's done such a great job in a male dominated industry. And I turned to the people at my table and I said,
Oh,
what
it's me.
industry isn't male dominated? And somebody goes, well, nursing. And I was like, nursing is medicine, and that is hugely
Male
male
dominated.
dominated.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it's funny because most of the real estate agents when I went into the business were women.
Yeah.
Management was men. And I used to joke that my broker in charge had a stable. And but now so many more agents are men. Now, commercial real estate, which is sort of a parallel universe, that is very male dominated in terms of the management and the commercial brokers. And
Mm-hmm.
that's I work 7 days a week. Commercial brokers do not. It's 9 to 5,
Yeah.
no
So
weekends.
wait, so tell me a little bit. Do you feel would your journey have been different? And do you think you would have been treated differently or you would be treated even now differently if you were a man in this business?
I
Tell me a
wouldn't
little
have
bit
been
about that.
treated differently by my clients,
Yeah.
but I think I would definitely have been treated differently by management because, most of people in management are male.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
Mm-hmm.
I had no interest in going into management in the huge company that I started out with. I was with a huge company for
Mm-hmm.
18 years, and I was like, no, I
Mm-hmm.
did not want to be in management. I did not want to be a broker in charge.
Mm-hmm.
Most broker in charge offices are at the bottom of the hill, and you know what slides downhill. So I didn't have any interest in that. I didn't want to be on salary. I didn't want to be dependent upon other people's performance. I love the eat what you kill thing.
Mm-hmm.
Now I am in management. Now I'm an owner and a manager. I have a very different approach, though, in that I will not ask or expect any of my agents to do anything that I won't accept myself as an agent, except for myself as an agent, because I still
Mm-hmm.
list and sell.
Yeah.
But that is not the mindset of, I can name so many people who are in management in real estate who have never listed or sold
Yeah.
a property.
Mm-hmm.
And yet they're running these companies and telling other people what to do, and those other people are letting them. I'm not
Right.
working for those companies, but
Right.
yeah, it's amazing what people will put up with.
So, have you ever noticed or felt like people have a harder time paying women their commission or would negotiate harder with women? I mean, the statistics show that women make less money a female real estate agent makes less money than a male real estate agent, and apples to apples, selling the same homes at the same rate. So, have you ever noticed that yourself?
I've
It's hard
never
to know
noticed that.
because you
I
know.
would say that agents who are more apt to say, can I cut my commission? Can I discount here? Can I discount there? I'd say that probably skews more female than
Mm.
male across the board, not so much in
Mhm.
my company. And, I
Yeah.
recently had a client who asked me to do something for free.
Mhm.
And I said, if you want me to do something, I will do it and I'll
Yeah.
work very hard. But I'm not a member of the Red Cross. This is not like a hobby for me. And he said,
Right.
well, will you share it with me? And I said, no, if you want to hire me to do a job, I'm more than happy to do that. Is
Right.
that person going to be more likely to ask me because I'm a girl versus a
Right.
man? I don't know. I think he'd be equally obnoxious to anybody.
Yeah. Well, I definitely see it in coaching, because I coach a lot of
Yeah.
male agents and female agents who are
Mm-hmm.
at the top. And the way that female agents are treated, that men would never be treated. In fact,
Really?
oh yeah, I see it all the time. They'll be telling me a story about a client who hung up on them, or the way they talked to them, or what they asked from them. And I think I never hear these stories with my male clients. It's
Well,
fascinating.
I have to say, yes, that's accurate. And I've had many, not too many, but many situations where a client will raise his, sometimes her, but his voice to me, and I'll just sit there and listen, and then they'll sort of spin out, and I'll say, "Are you done?"
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah. I'll say, "Okay, now we're done," because nobody speaks that way to me. Nobody raises their voice, especially, I mean, we're not even married, so you're not going to
Right.
get away with this. I will, we are going to have to agree to disagree, and I'll send you over a release tomorrow.
Yeah.
The first time that happened, the the client who did it he was also in the service sector. He just didn't want to believe that he was, because he was an
Mm-hmm.
architect.
Mm-hmm.
And he was mistaking me for a box of Kleenex, really.
Yeah.
And when I said, "I'll send you over a release, this is not working. I don't need to represent you anymore." The next day, he couldn't bring himself to say he was sorry. He just said, "Well, things sure got out of hand." I'm like, "You think?" But he never raised his voice or got out of line after that again. And I think
Yeah.
when there are some people, it's a game, and it's
Yeah.
always men.
Yeah.
Push and push and push and push and push until you say, "No, stop that."
Right.
And when you
Yeah.
say no, then they do stop. But it's sort of
Yeah.
like they're going to push until you say stop.
Yeah. That's good. Well, I think what's important and an important message here is to really set a boundary and have the
Absolutely.
confidence have the confidence to break up when someone's treating you
Yeah,
poorly.
exactly.
And I think that goes a long way, because then it sets a real tone for everyone. And it also gives you a lot of confidence, because you have the confidence to break up with anyone who is not treating you well. And that makes sense, because
Well,
why
and
would you want a
it's not
partner?
just about breaking up. A lot of times when you're having a listing appointment, and they'll start out saying, "Well, I'm not going to pay more than X, and I
Hmm.
want a discount." And we'll have a conversation. I'll say, "Look, if you want a discount brokerage, I'm more than happy to refer you to someone. But I'm
Hmm.
full service, so I can't discount what I do.
Yeah,
And
that's
therefore,
good.
if that's more important to you," but they're basically saying, "No, I want you. I just want it at a discount rate." But
Mhm.
what I tell them is, if I can't negotiate in my own best interest,
Yeah,
how can I negotiate on your behalf?
right.
And those same agents who
Hmm.
cave and who discount or whatever, they're not going to make as much on that transaction. So
Right,
what is their human motivation going to be? To get
right,
this thing off of my books as quickly as possible.
right.
So how you do one thing,
Hmm.
how you do everything.
Yeah, that's good. All right, so tell me a little bit. What do you think are some of the things that set you apart as a woman in the business? Anything that you think really enhances your experience or your ability to do the job well?
Yes, I don't care if you like me. I
Mm-hmm.
care. I care that you respect me. I am here to advocate my client's best interest.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish I had a dime for every time the agent on the other side says, "Well, I don't really care what the contract says. I just want my people to be happy."
Yeah,
I'm like, "Where does it say in the contract that everybody's supposed to be happy? We just have
yeah,
to abide by the contract." But that is somebody
hmm,
who wants to be liked,
yeah,
and they want to be liked at the expense of not being candid or being willing to
yeah,
speak up to their own client. And
mm,
obviously my philosophy works, or I wouldn't be at the top of the heap in this market. But
mm,
there is this mindset that women are trained in, that it is more important to be liked than it
yeah.
is to be effective. And if it's
That's
more important
good.
for you to be liked, then too many people go into real estate because I'm a people person and I just
Right.
love people. Well, I have a sticker on my iPad that said I used to be a people person until, well, people. And the fact is, it's a tough business, and if you don't set
Mm-hmm.
boundaries for yourself and for your client, it's very easy to get bamboozled. But if it's more important for you to be liked, that you're going to
Mm-hmm.
make it tougher for yourself.
Yeah, and it's going to be hard for you to set those boundaries, and you might lose a lot of perspective along the way, because it
Yeah.
is a business at the end of the day.
I think I know I've told you this before, but when we moved to Greenville, South Carolina, 35
Hmm.
years ago, my mother, who had lived in Atlanta during the 50s, she said, "Well, you're going to have to make friends with those nice Southern women. So my advice is just don't be yourself for the first 6 months or so, and then you should be fine. And oddly enough, she meant that as a compliment because
Right.
she meant that I had to want to be liked
Mm-hmm.
more than respected. And the thing is,
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot of friends now who I think
Mm-hmm.
they like me, but they like me for who I am and not
Right.
because I've been trying to get them to like me.
Yeah,
They
that's
like
right.
me, warts and all.
Were you even were
Men
you
don't
even
ever worry
able?
about whether they're liked. They assume that you do.
Yeah. Were you even able to fake it for 6 months? I don't like, could you
No,
even do that?
no, I have never been able to fake much of anything, Liz.
Yeah, I didn't think so. I didn't think that was going to work on you, but I
Yeah.
love that advice. I think it's really funny. Okay, so what advice would you give young women who want to aspire to be you? I mean, you're such an incredible inspiration, raising 4 kids, being a top real estate broker, having your own company, being a CEO. It's really impressive, and you've had an incredible career, an incredible run. So what do you think about women coming in, to the workplace and wanting to be in real estate? What's your advice to them?
My advice to them is to treat it like the business that it is.
Mm,
If nobody goes into architecture or as a CPA, see how I like it.
yeah,
It is a business, and at the end of your first year, if your expenses and your income are about in
yeah.
sync, then you've got a future in it. But it is not easy money.
Mm,
There's no such thing as luck. You make your own luck.
yeah,
You put yourself in the way of opportunity. You create opportunity for yourself. Nothing, if you're expecting to be fed, you're going to be very hungry. And
right.
you've really got to put in the work. And
Mm,
client service is not lip service. Client service is a
mm,
real thing. If
mm,
there are too many agents out there who think that the client is a mark,
mm,
that it's an opportunity as opposed to a real relationship. I mean,
right.
I had a client 2 years ago who called me up because he knew that I would know who a good plastic surgeon was for breast reconstruction. And it was a man who had an unusual case of breast cancer. And he was
Mm,
mortified. And he said, well, I just figure you know everybody. And
mm,
I was more than happy to help him.
right,
And um, that has nothing to do with real estate. It has
right.
everything to do with an ongoing relationship where you're a
Yeah,
resource to somebody.
yeah,
But
yeah,
if my relationship with him was strictly transactional, and
yeah.
that's the way it is for a lot of people, he
Hmm.
wouldn't have thought of me and I wouldn't have been able to help him.
Yeah, yeah. Good.
But my basic advice to women going into it is you got to go full throttle. That
Mm,
doesn't mean at the expense of your marriage or your family.
yeah.
You've got to you've got to treat your children like your clients.
Mm,
But and here's the other thing, and it sounds very harsh, but I tell all of my agents, whether they're men or women, if they can't do something for a client
hmm.
because they have an obligation to their child, you
Yes.
don't say, "Oh, well, I can't show you the house because little Johnny has soccer practice at 4."
Yeah.
But what you do say is, "Well, I'm committed to another client at 4, but I'm
Mm,
available up until 3:30 or after 5:30. Does that work for you?" They don't need to know that your client is only 4 feet tall.
yeah. Yeah, totally.
That's really none of their business. But the
Yeah.
fact is, people like to work with busy people. But
Right.
if you use your child, your
Mm,
family as an excuse for not working, you're not going to generate respect. And you're also kind of throwing your kids under the bus.
yeah.
Your
Yeah.
kids should be your most important clients.
Yeah.
I made that mistake for a long time. And
Yeah.
my dear husband once said, I'd like to think I'm as important as any of your clients. And
Yeah.
he is, but he had to remind me of that a few times. I was veering
Yeah.
into my mom's lane too much.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I think that happens with a lot of people too, especially during the crux of their career when they're really busy and they have a lot going on, and you can lose sight of things. And also, sometimes I find too, building years are different than let's call it maintaining years or when you
Yes.
get there.
Yeah.
Sometimes the years when you're building, you're leaning more into the work than everyone. And then you arrive and you can kind of balance out again, and so it's also important for women to recognize there's going to be a time where maybe in order for you to get to the level you're trying to get to, you might have to over index on work
Yeah,
for a year or two. And
absolutely.
it's just a reality.
Investment is not just a question of money, it's a question of time and commitment.
Yeah. Yes. And that sometimes things might be out of balance during that time, and that's okay.
But
That's
what
okay.
worries me is when a female agent tells me that they're doing something because their husband is babysitting,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
whereas
Yeah. Mm.
male agents never say, "Well, my wife is babysitting." And when they
Right.
say my husband's babysitting, I'll be really, for whose kids? You're taking in
Hmm.
other kids.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
that to me shows that things are kind of out of whack, out of balance at home if
Yeah.
somebody is thinks they're babysitting.
That actually happened to me when I first had my son Teddy, my first child, and I was going to play tennis, and I was coming out of the car, and then a man I knew was kind of my parents' age. They said, "Oh, it's Chris, as my husband. Is he babysitting Teddy?" And I said, "No, no, no. He's a parent."
Good for you. Good for
I said,
you.
"Nope, nope, nope. He's
Yep.
not the babysitter." I said, "No, he signed up for the parenting side. He's
Yep.
one of the parents. Nope, he's just parenting Teddy."
You know,
That's
that reminds, so when I went into the business over 30 years ago, it's like people, they want you to do well, but they don't want
yeah,
you to do that well,
yeah,
because then it gives the lie to the fact that a lot of people think that the more successful agents are just lucky. We're not just
yeah.
lucky. We're working
Mhm.
at it. And there was this one woman, she's long since, pushing up daisies now, but her name was Delia. And she was constantly asking me who would, now I see you here at the office so much. Who's taking care of your children?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And, the first couple of times I'd be like, well, they're at home with their dad, or,
Mhm.
I have, and then I thought, why is that any of her business? But she kept asking the question.
Yeah.
And, she was probably in her 70s at the time. And
Mm.
I was in my mid 30s. And so I finally looked at her. I said, well, got this big dog pen at home, and I've gotten this big padlock, and they pick and pick and pick at it. And I just put them in the dog pen. And she was horrified, but she never asked me again. But, she never asked any of the men in the company who was taking
Yeah,
care of their children.
yeah,
Um, but that's an example of how, when I went into the business, the people who were hardest on me
yeah.
were other women.
Interesting.
Yeah, that
Well,
is not
that's
true
good
anymore.
news.
Yeah.
That's good news about where we are today. I mean,
Yes,
really,
absolutely.
and factually, look, also one of the things they show is that men and women are coming into the workforce at almost 50% same rate, and they're leaving at the same rate too. So
Really?
stepping out of work at young ages, yes,
Uh-huh.
at exact same. So whereas it used to be a lot more
Yeah.
to have to be with their children instead of working, we are seeing equal rates of men and women
So
stepping
now
out.
it's more of a partnership or taking turns. That's great.
Yeah, whatever. It's 50, or whatever reason they're stepping out of work. It could be nothing to do with children. Who knows?
Right.
But it's at an equal rate. And that's what's so significant. So we're really seeing a big shift. Having said that, the article in the Wall Street Journal today was that women are leaving Goldman Sachs because they're not getting the top jobs. So there's still a lot of challenges. But there's still a lot of challenges. But having said that, we have seen a lot of shifts. We see women supporting each other, women making a big difference. I think what I see on my end is that we still need to see the clients treating the women with the same respect and willing to pay the women with the same in the same way. Because if you really recognize it, people are really have a much easier time paying men. Period. Which is why we have a pay gap. You know, there's a reason there's a pay gap, and it's all over, and it goes up as you rise. So in medicine, the biggest pay gap is the surgeons. So at the highest pay, the gap is the highest. Yeah, yeah, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh yes, yes, and sales, biggest pay gaps. Yes, sales positions. Yes, hmm yeah. I mean, all of these it goes up. It goes up as you go up the ladder. Yeah, really. You're kidding me. Wow. That's shocking. Yeah, yeah. Well, and that's also something that I think people need to be, with the women need to be aware of in real estate, especially. I think they do have to pay attention because, see, they don't have the purview that I have of talking to a man and talking to a woman. They don't know that sometimes the way they're being treated would not be happening if they were talking to a man. And that's something that's important to recognize because you have to be commanding that respect, as you say. And I see it all the time in society, in business, that people are willing to give a man a raise right away. He's supporting a family, he needs more money. They feel good paying the man the money. And when they pay it to the women, it just doesn't quite feel as good. And that's what we've seen. If you look at real estate, how is real estate any different from insurance or financial analysts, right? But are they always questioning the financial analysts' percentage or the insurance people's percentages, or why they're getting it, or why they deserve it, or why they should be having it? Yet I hear all the time people questioning the percentages, right? I mean, they're questioning the men too, but again, it's something to be aware of. Yeah. So that, I mean, we've seen a shift. We've seen a big shift in that because there are a lot of women who are supporting their families. But I also think for women, when they're being paid, let's say, a good income, they don't recognize that there's still a big gap. So just because it's a high income doesn't mean it's fair. So it's definitely something I've seen a lot around. Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 He wouldn't like it. Good. All right, well, Joan, we are going to have to wrap. For anybody who's listening, I know for anybody who's listening, Joan also is an author. She wrote As Is, which is a great book on real estate and all the ins and outs and the inside guide. No, it's a great book, and it's a great inside guide on really how to do this business well. And it tells a lot of really good secrets so you can learn fast. Yeah, 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 yeah. Right, right, right. Yeah, no, I mean, it really is. It's more than, it happens a lot more than you realize. And that is it is interesting. And like I said, I get to see it. I get to see it all. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, well, I don't think you did, but if you did, I would have been really happy to. All right, John, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Yeah.